Did you hit record?
I did. You're good to go.
Are we rolling? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Wheeler, and I am thrilled to be here. And I do want to recognize Tara G., who is in the room today as the current president of the California Park and Recreation Society. Tara, do you want to say anything to everybody while you have people here? Did you just tune in and put me on mute and go get lunch?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry. No, I forgot where the mute button was. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great time. Thank you, Jim, for acknowledging me. I know this is going to be a great session and hope everybody's getting the best out of it. So hang in there. Let's go for it.
That's so kind of you. So good afternoon. It's funny, we were just talking about how oh my gosh, so long ago, in the early 80s in Chico, while I was getting a degree in PE and life science, I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. And I got offered a job to go down to the city of San Ramon. It had incorporated. And in 1988, it took over all the parks from the Dublin San Ramon Services District. And I worked there for 4 months and was offered a job as an aquatic coordinator. And I didn't know what that was. And I never really thought about the fact that Jeffy Oreo, who was the director or the superintendent at the time, became the director. And I had worked for him in Walnut Creek as a kid for years. And I never really thought about the fact that what he did, like he was a recreation supervisor. I just never thought of that. My journey has been crazy, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But today we're really here. Hey, Spike. Today we're really here to talk about culture and grit. And I did one of those little rec talks on this subject a little bit. And this was my entry slide. And I'm sure you all heard, I did this joke before, so if you heard it, I'm sorry. I heard you all heard about the chameleon who got old and couldn't change color anymore. He had a reptile dysfunction. So anyway, that's my starting joke. We're going to talk about culture and grit, and actually I'm very excited to talk about culture and grit because I've worked in a lot of places, and I'll tell you about my path in a minute, and every culture is different, and this session's really about change. You know, when I got my offer letter in Hard, it said James Wheeler, AKA the change agent. And it was a very planned change to try and just move a culture and get back to some community-based programming. And so that was really interesting for me that I was actually called out on being that. But what I realized over time is that I was kind of a cultural chameleon, as I call it. And when you work in enough places, when I tell you all the places I work, you're going to be like, how do you still have a job? And then we're going to laugh and I'm going to move on. But really, culture is an interesting thing. So culture has many meanings when you look it up in the dictionary. One, of course, is customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. And that's kind of what happens at work. So culture's all around us, and there's many definitions, set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices, again, that characterize an institution or organization. This is your culture, the culture within your agency, and also the culture within your community. I don't just want to talk about agencies. I want to talk about communities. As I look at all the amazing sessions, the inclusion and equity in session, I think that Dobson and Consumness, someone else from Consumness is doing today. As I look at Brandon Taylor and Heather Billhauer's work on Jedi, as I look at what's just happening in the world around us and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything else, I go, wow, actually culture and grit and adaptability are going to become more and more important every day in our normal work life. So we have the set of cultures that you have. There are also a set of values or practices associated with a particular field. You know, that's the culture of nursing, or that's the culture of the medical field or whatever. So sometimes it's field related. Integrated patterns of human belief, depending on capacity for learning, for me, culture transmitting from one generation to another, I used to always say, never underestimate the power of the casual passing of knowledge. When you're trying to teach people out in the field, or you're trying to teach a lifeguard on a pool deck, that casual conversation, that 1 minute chat you have is one of the most powerful knowledge tools, I think, in our profession today. And so transmitting that knowledge from generation to generation, you know, there's probably some little trick you have in your sleeve. For me, I know how to build balloon arches. I build really good balloon arches, and I tie balloons faster than anybody you'll ever meet. And I teach people how to tie the balloon off right and how to build the arch, right? Use a sizing guide so they're all the same. And I love doing that. That's my little trade, and I pass that on from generation to generation for years in the recreation field, but we do pass stuff. An enlightenment of taste or intelligence. Oh, he's such a cultured person, right? That wouldn't be me, but there are cultured people on the video, Dr. Chamberlain. And then for me, the last one, of course, is the act or process of cultivating living material in a prepared nutrient medium. That would be a petri dish. And this is where I fall back on my life science experience in Chico in Holt Hall, the biology hall. And because I know there's a wildcat or two in the room. And basically for me, when I talk about culture, I really think when I read the last definition, the aha light went on, I went, holy smokes. So you could take in your final test in bacteriology, there's a petri dish and it has a white streak across it. And you work backwards testing to see, is it gram positive, negative? And you go through all these tests to discern what kind of bacteria that is. And it only grows on certain mediums. So the medium they put it on has to feed that kind of bacteria. And you could put a sulfur oxidizing bacteria on something with no sulfur, it would die. But if you put it in sulfur environment, it would live. So for me, the culture thing was great because I really believe that the nutrient media, that the way you feed and prepare and set up your agency allows the bacteria in your dish to grow. Not saying that staph is bacteria, but just saying that there's whole nother element of providing the things that allow people to thrive, right? This is part of setting up a culture. So, and everybody thrives just like every bacteria thrives on something different. So that was kind of my aha moment. If you're looking going, I thought we're going to talk about recreation community, not bacteria. We are, but I had to stop for a second because I thought it was amazing. And then I found that amazing graphic that I just had to share. I saw Jonathan smile. Okay, you cannot change culture without having grit. And you maybe remember, you're old enough to remember John Wayne in the original True Grit. Maybe you're old enough to remember the new True Grit. Either one, they're both amazing movies. But having grit, you know, the definitions of grit would be like your sandpaper, right? Like sandstones, you know, the way they determine if that number on the back of the sandpaper, 60, 100, 120, 180, 400 for boats and stuff, that's like the size of a particle and the grit it can fall through. That's how you determine the size of grit. I think your grit can be 60 or it can be 400, and it all just depends on what you're dealing with, right? I am not going to lie to you today, and in an effort not to say anything negative about any agency that I ever worked for, I have worked in some agencies where it took a lot of grit to make change occur. And if you're in an agency where you're frustrated, if you're in a position in your job where you're frustrated, you're not really sure how to get something done or how to change a culture or whatever, hopefully today will help you with that. But I will tell you that being an agent of change is really hard, and you can't do it without having some grit and tenacity and stick-to-itness on what you want to do, and you cannot give up. The one thing I got going for me is I don't give up. Whether I win, lose, draw, I won't give up. One of the funny things is grit is liberal in Canadian politics, which I never knew. If there's any Canadians in the room, I apologize for not knowing that, but that's interesting to me. So, look at all the great words associated with grit. Pluck, mettle, strength, moral fiber, steel, nerve, fortitude, toughness. These are all things that have grit, and you cannot lead without grit. If you really want to lead well, you have to have grit. You have to have that moral fiber, strength of character, strength of will. I love these terms, and I love looking at grit not as a separate part of culture, but as part of culture. Change requires grit, requires perseverance, endurance, and then maybe just a little guts or spunk thrown in there in the bottom, right? But it does require some perseverance to do it. So we take many paths in our jobs, and your path is your own. My favorite book ever is Oh, the Places You Will Go by Dr. Seuss. I mean, like of anything I ever read in my entire life, that is my favorite book. It talks, there was times in my life, maybe you were at the Region 1 workshop where we all got up and talked about Dr. Seuss in the beginning. And when I talked about Oh, the Places You Go, I shared some very personal things about job experiences and places where I had thrived and places where we kind of mutually separated ways with no hard feelings, but things didn't work. We all take a separate path to get where we need to go. And I would be remiss if I looked at you today and said, I don't know what path I took. If you've known me for a long time, you're probably going, holy cow, how did he ever become the general manager of a recreation district that's 100 square miles serving 300,000 people? And I'm like, I don't know. I took my own path. And sometimes I took a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. And this is all part of culture and grit. The grit I had to know that maybe what I have to offer isn't for you. I don't know if anybody in this room remembers Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss was one of the most amazing park and recreation professionals I ever had the pleasure of working and serving with on the CPRS state board. Barry got his first director job, I think he was 55. And he had waited, and he just wasn't understood, and he just didn't get his chance. And he was like one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet in parks and recreation. So everybody takes a separate path, and some paths are quick, some paths are slow. I never thought in 1988 that my fellow recreation coordinator would end up being the interim dean at a college and a university. And he's sitting here today. We never know where our path will take us. There's many paths. For me, I'm a hopper. There's not a lot of hoppers, but I hop. So here it goes. San Ramon, Vallejo, Oakland, San Anselmo, Nevada City, Oakland, San Francisco, Hayward. 32 years later, if you average it out, it's about 1 stop every 5 years. They say 5 years is okay. I had an 8-year, a 10-year, I had a 3-year. I worked for the town of San Anselmo. I had 5 city managers in 42 months in my first director job. And so if you ever wondered why I'm not in San Anselmo or why I left San Anselmo, the first one was very, very different than the 5th one. And by the time I got to the 5th one, it just wasn't for me. And it crushed me because I was basically born in San Anselmo. And my middle name's on a building downtown San Anselmo. And my legacy was from there. My father grew up there, and my grandma grew up there, and it just had to work. But guess what? It didn't work. And I left, and I was dejected because we had a mutual parting of ways, and I thought, oh, it's ruined. But you know what? I sat back, I recalibrated, I went in, and hopping is not so bad. And so you may be a hopper, you may be a comfort zoner. It really doesn't matter. If you find somewhere good to work where you want to be for a long time and it works for you, stay there. Enjoy it. Enjoy the culture. Enjoy the people changing around you because there's still cultural challenges and things to fix. Some people like to hop. Some people hop around. Some people don't. You know, it used to bother me so much, in case you ever said this to me, now you know, when I would walk into a conference and I'd walk up and someone would be like, oh, where are you now? And I'd be, oh, wow, that's a really lousy way to say you can't keep a job, or that's weird, right? Like, I enjoy the change, and if you know me, I don't have ADHD. I have HD ADHD. I have high definition ADHD, man. And so for me to stay somewhere too long just doesn't work for me personally. You know, it just doesn't. But part of this whole cultural change agent is understanding that whether you move a lot or not, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, and to be an agent of change, it really takes a lot of work. So the one thing I would encourage, if this topic interests you, I would really look into change. I would Google search change, and maybe a guy, Dennis Renia, R-E-I-N-A, wrote a book called Trust and Betrayal in the Workplace. And I got to hear him one day, and he ended up sitting next to me for lunch. And what I learned that day is that nobody likes change. He said, look, you can have the best plan in the world. You can put it on the PowerPoint. You can work on it for months with your team. You can stand up in front of 200 people. You can show the PowerPoint. And when you're done, you say, is there any questions? And no one asks any questions. And you think, all right, we did good. There's 3 reasons people don't like change. And the first one is they don't understand it. And maybe they just didn't understand what just happened and they don't want to ask the awkward question. The second one is they bona fidely don't like the change. Like they like it how it is. Someone yesterday I was listening to had to pull out the old button. But we've always done it that way. They just don't like the change. And the third reason is they don't like you. And maybe they just don't like you. Maybe they don't like the way you approach change. So there's 3 different things to think about. Do they get it? Do they like what they did? Why do they like it? And why don't they like me? Maybe I need to change how I work. I'm not telling you need to change so everyone likes you, but people liking you is very, very important. If you think people don't have to like you and you can just do your work, good luck. You will get nowhere. First, you have to seek to understand each other, get to know each other. Then you can start talking about how change goes. You can be the boss and people have to listen to you, but they don't have, and they should have to respect you, but that's something that doesn't come automatically. Some things you need to just demand respect in certain elements of a job, and a lot of respect you have to earn. And I believe personally having open, honest conversations and having integrity really help you a lot with how people handle change. The other thing I learned about change from Mr. Rennie and his wife was that sometimes we do change and those people who liked it the way it was, they feel betrayed. Like, you changed this on me. How can you betray me like that? Well, that's just part of life. You can count on death, taxes, and change. Those things are going to happen. So as you go forward thinking about the change, and people feeling betrayed, the one that's more important to me when I think about change I make is I try to consider the unintentional betrayals. The things that end up being side results of change that we never intended that hurt somebody. That's different. And that's where you really have to, as you go through change, again, oh gosh, I want the most diverse staff and leadership team possible. I want the people who are super knowledgeable. And then I want what I learned at a volunteer meeting one time. I want the constructively discontent. I want discontent people, but they need to be constructively discontent. You can't just be discontent. You must be constructively discontent. And if you are constructive in your discontentness, that's probably not a word, then you really have the right to express your point of view, right? If it's constructive and you mean well. We want a bunch of diverse viewpoints to go in and make decisions to come out with one voice that ultimately moves us forward, right? But I want the most diverse, crazy thinking team possible. I want the crazy thinker. I want the no chance taker. I want everybody in the room to really build a diverse team to try and get all the viewpoints possible to consider everything so we don't unintentionally betray somebody, and that our change is actually perfect. Finally, remember, it's a lot easier for people to deal with large change, big change, restructure the whole unit versus the little thing. Hey, we moved the copy machine. What? Why did we move the copy machine? The copy's over here now. People have a lot harder time with little change than big change sometimes. So think about that as you play agent of change. I love this saying. If you ever wonder what drives me, it's right here. This and the one I'm going to share with you at the end, and you'll know everything you ever didn't know or understand about Jim Wheeler. It's my sacred human responsibility to do the best I can, volunteer where I can, give back what I can, do what I can, help who I can, and all those other things. I am not here today. I sat in a session last week and the guy just talked about himself. I really don't want to do that. But I will tell you that it's my responsibility to do the best I can. Therefore, I chair the foundation for CPRS. I'm the athletic director at my child's school. I'm a sailing coach every Sunday. I'm the safety officer at my yacht club. and I run my district, and I do all these things together because it makes me very, very happy. And I give all that I can when I can. And so you have to do the best you're capable of, and if you're capable of doing it and capable of doing more, you should. Oops. Okay. Culture is an interesting thing. We're going to talk about culture. And I want to talk right now about strategy versus culture. Two completely different things that as I started researching this, I realized, wow, that makes great sense. So strategies are our goals. Everybody got a strategic plan at work, or goals, or mission, vision, value goals. The strategic plan. You have goals, you make objectives to meet those goals, and then you do the activities that have those, right? Like achievable objectives, right? Culture's different. Culture is the more driving path than the guiding path in life. Culture is my values, my practices, my behaviors. When I was really young, I was once young, like you. When I was young, I used to talk about making decisions. And I don't know, you all know I grew up in the lifeguard world and aquatics and talking to senior guards about how to deal with lifeguards. And wow, last year you were both lifeguards and now you're the boss. And how do you deal with that? And the one thing we talked about was teaching decision making. Chris, you and I had this talk a lot. Can you really teach decision making? You can look at decisions and you can praise the good ones and slightly educate the bad ones, and the ones that are heinously bad you have to just deal with, right? The unpleasant stuff. But really decision making, teaching people decision making is a lot of coaching, right? Like, oh, that's a good one, or oh, that's a bad one. The one thing you have to do is when they come to you to take the, if you ever read the 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, right? The monkey's on my back. It's a big project I have. I walk up to you. I'm telling you, oh, I'm struggling with this project. I don't know what to do. And you're like, oh, fine, here. And you take the monkey off their back and you take that project on. Do not take the monkey. Don't take the monkey. Keep the monkey on their back and start asking them how they'd solve the problem and start making them the thinker, right? Like, well, what would you do? Don't ask me for a solution. Come to me and say, here's what I think I want to do with this stuff. And you go, heck of a good idea, or did you think of? Yeah, a little bit, okay, and then send them off. And the funny thing about the delegation and everything is I tell people all the time, I would rather delegate and do 20% of the work when I fix the project than do 100% of it for you. So you bring it to me, I'll fix it, I'll coach, I'll mentor, but I'm not going to do it. So don't take the monkey. But when you teach decision making, you have to have them fail. Failure is all part of this, right? We'll talk about failure. You cannot learn without failing. Everybody, kids fall down, kids fall down, kids fall down, and then dad gets to see them take those first steps, right? This is just life, and it goes all the way back to that. So I think your values, your practices, your behaviors, these are the three big things for me that will allow me to change culture. And, you know, all through my career, everywhere I go, I've had objectives, right? And I've worked in some big Oakland, San Francisco, big cities, big cultures, hard to change. But these are the things, my values, my practices, my behavior. Right now, there's 3 words taped to my desk that says honesty, effort, and respect. Those are my 3 words right now. I just need honesty, effort, and respect from everybody. And if we do that, we'll have a better place tomorrow, right? So it's funny because when you get into strategy versus culture, you can get into the cultural alignment framework that Stuart Spencer talks about, and it basically aligns strategy and culture under the premise that culture supports or undermines its business strategy. You're like, what? How can culture undermine business strategy? And there's inherent tension between culture and strategy. So what you have to do is look at it as flexibility versus stability, or independence versus interdependence. And we end up with a framework, a cultural alignment framework. And you know how these work. Over here, if I'm independent and flexible, I got enjoyment and learning, right? Because I'm on my own and I'm doing what I want and I'm flexible. You get down in here, stability and interdependence, order and safety. And in the middle, these things change. I like these 6 factors of talking about flexibility versus stability more so. And what are the stability and what are the flexibility, and how does independence and interdependence play a role in this? I'm not going to get deep into organizational development. That's why my best friend has a doctorate in it, because I don't need to get deep in it. Wave your hand if you got a doctorate in organizational development. Right there. You ever want to ask somebody, he's the guy. But I do think it's important for you to know this, and if the subject interests you, this is very important to know. All right. Let's talk about how we change culture in a community or an organization. If you think you could roll into San Francisco, where you're the first manager hired from the outside in 20 years, and start slinging bricks and changing people's attitudes, and someone calls you the Zeus of aquatics. Oh, great, we hired the Zeus of aquatics. And I'm like, that's Triton or Neptune, thank you. There's no Zeus in aquatics. But I laughed, and I'm like, and the problem is that sometimes people confuse confidence for arrogance, and they make judgments about people, and then the rumors precede you. I heard somebody went to HR when I got here and said, you can't hire him. And I was like, wow, I don't even think we've met. So the thing is that you have to do your homework. So the first part of change is your homework. You have to seek to understand. And if you're looking to change an agency or get a new job, or you're looking to change your agency or the people around you, you have to do your homework. You have to sit and listen and study for quite some time. You have to respect the culture you walked into. And the last thing you can do, even though you want to, and again, remember, this is the guy been in 6 agencies in 32 years. You can't walk in and say, why in the world did they do this? In fact, the job I have now, what was hanging on my bulletin board, Debbie Hernandez, when I first got hired? Do you remember? Nicole, do you remember? There was a picture of somebody, and it had a little thing under it. It was the previous superintendent, and it said, WKD. What would Carrie do?
Right. What would Carrie do?
And that was the previous superintendent. And my whole thing was, in the beginning, I'm going to say, what would Carrie do right now? Okay, well, that's good. Let's think about it. And that made it comfortable for people, right? Like, I appreciated and carried forward the legacy while I knew I came to make my own change. And it was respectful. But I did my homework. And every time I asked what would Carrie do, that was more homework, right? And I think the same thing's true in your community. When I got to Vallejo and became superintendent of recreation, I walked around downtown with my business card, and I remember going into the Filipino American Youth Society. There was a group, and I walked in and said, hi, I'm Jim Wheeler, and I'm from GVRD, and I want to help you guys. What can we do? And they're like looking at me like, what can you do for me? And they'd never had that rapport, that relationship. So I went out and did my homework. I figured out the Fighting Back Partnership was, and all the big players in Vallejo, and how do you get grants, and how do you work in. So homework's critical. I think the other thing you have to understand is who's the boss. And I'm going to tell you straight up, and I don't even know who's on this call. This is probably dangerous. I should be looking at all these names real quick. I'll tell you, oh my goodness gracious. Here's the thing. You got to know who the boss is. And you have to understand what the boss wants. And in some cases, I'm a special district. The boss is also the city council, and I don't even work for them. Who's the boss? What's their attitude? You have to get to know them. You can't change culture. Here's the problem. I did this talk a while back, and I got an email right away saying, oh, it's so great to hear you speak. No one understands me either. I was like going, well, I don't know if people don't understand me, but I try to do things and it doesn't work with my boss, and I basically kind of felt like, well, you need to know your boss. And that whole thing where you need to respect the people you work for, that's just it. You know, I had the conversation again today with someone, no one makes you come to work. That's a horrible conversation to have with someone. But sometimes it's a starting point of real conversations, right? Like, look, why? What's wrong? Why are you here? And you learn things about people. But it's critical to know who's the boss, and it's critical to know who the big players are in your community. I can't do anything in the Tennyson corridor without Tennyson Thrives, and the group that's been down there doing the work in the trenches for 15 years. It's the crime hotspot in Hayward right now. And I can't go down there and do anything without knowing the players and who in the community is involved and what they do. And it's critical you do that. And then it's also critical, I will tell you, it's critical you know how your bosses feel. And when you're director, there's multiple of them sometimes besides the city manager, right? And so knowing what they want. One of the biggest mistakes I made in San Anselmo was I told somebody I got hired by the city council to do what I thought was the right thing. And actually, I was hired by the city council to guide them to do what they thought was the right thing with my educating and nudging and pushing. So I learned a huge lesson there. Like, I don't know and I can't tell you. I have to lead you to where I need you to go. And that's a huge part of cultural change, right? It's ginormous. All right. Without clear expectations, we are nothing, right? We're absolutely nothing without clear expectations. You have to make them very clear. Now, one of my favorite words to use, sorry, I'm looking, okay, we got an hour, oh good, I can keep going. Now I have to expand you all again. There you are. One of the things that I believe is that expectations must be clear to have accountability. Without clear expectations, there's no accountability. You can't hold people accountable for what they don't know. Right now, I'm going through that. Believe it or not, one of my first employee acts as general manager will be to bring all my supervisors, coordinators, foremen, and anybody who supervises and evaluates anybody together to talk about our philosophy about honesty, effort, and respect, and then to talk about the discipline process and how it works, and documentation, which will lead into the annual evaluation and changes to that, which will lead into like no surprises when you get to review time. But it's a full circle, right? And the full circle starts with, here's our expectations. There's no place for goals or work plans in our annual review form right now. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous, because this isn't about telling you everything you did wrong. This is about coaching you to how to do things right. So we need to have you have those. So expectations need to be very clear, and people need to be held accountable for them. And quite honestly, transformational leadership, the ability to have people in a room, figure out the vision together, and then move forward with one voice helps you when it comes to clear expectations. Set the vision and the expectations with everybody, and they're going to have a lot easier time doing them, dealing with them, understanding them. And when you call them out on not meeting them, they're going to go, oh, yeah, I know, we talked about that. Makes your life much easier. Include people in all that planning and all that goal setting. Oh, wait, Nicole, here's the commercial moment. You ready? Come on. Oh, yeah, here's my hard cup. All right, commercial's over. Chamberlain, you wish you had one. Okay. Fear. People fear the unknown. People fear change. And the only thing I can tell you to alleviate people's fear is to be a good communicator and to tell the truth and to communicate early and often. Right now, everybody's scared to death. I don't care who you are. If you're not scared to death right now, then tell me how you cope, because we should all be scared to death. I don't know about you. In a normal year, the recreation department in Hard makes $5.9 million. Classes, programs, rentals, group rentals, everything, right? Golf, everything. This year, we're budgeted to make 2.4. We've made 400, and we're halfway through the year almost. Can't make it doing virtual stuff. I can't make it if I can't put people in buildings. I can't make it if I can't put people in picnic buildings. So there's a lot of scared people right now looking to the future, right? What do you think the conversation I'm having with everyone right now is? It's pretty simple. We need to save money. If you don't need it, don't buy it. If you can figure out how to generate it, generate it. You can't really offer a lot of stuff that doesn't at least pay for itself without all the admin stuff built in, right? Just simple cost recovery, right? And saving money saves jobs come June. Because if you don't get back to renting picnic areas and buildings and in-person classes and, oh my gosh, adult sports leagues, if you can't get the sacred cows of revenue back in your stream, you're going to have a really lousy budget year next year, which could include laying off more employees. I have 2 people I'm looking at the Zoom right now that work for me. They've heard this before. Because when people are afraid, you need to tell them like the truth up front. You don't try to hide what might happen. You share that bad news early and often. And if you think it's going to go sideways, you let people know, hey, here's what I'm going to do my best for everybody, but this could go sideways. And you need to be prepared for it to go sideways, because then when it does go sideways, what's up? Sorry. Then when it does, yeah, a little AC/DC. And then when it does go sideways, right, people aren't shocked. They're not finding out that, you know, this was going to happen because they had an idea that if they all didn't work as a team to solve these common problems, we could end up here down the road. And sharing that often and early alleviates fear. Seek to understand. Oh, goodness gracious. The best, I don't know if you listened to the executive lunch and learn yesterday, who's Neely Bott, right? Pros Consulting, is that his name? I listened to him, I don't. And the book, How to Be Heard. Go to Julian Treasure on YouTube and listen to this guy talk about how to listen and how to be heard. It is astronomical good stuff. But it all comes back to understanding, seeking to understand. You can't do this stuff. All this has to have understanding. You have to understand the who, the what, the why, the where, the how. And this is actually, the talk I did this morning was using this to understand how to keep pools safer, the big I, right? Like knowing all these things help you save lives. Now I'm telling you, understanding all these things pretty close to helps you save lives. It keeps your culture rolling down the proper road, right? And will keep you on track for making sure you do good things. So seeking to understand is critical, but trust is the most important thing. Relations get built and then trust gets imparted. Trust doesn't come naturally. One of my favorite girlfriends of my entire life, we broke up because she didn't trust anybody until they proved themselves to her, and I trusted everybody until you screwed me. Trust is an interesting thing. It changes lives. It can change relationships. It can change your whole life path. I thought that was my path, man, and I finally one day I'm like, you know what, I'm so tired of just the negative, you don't trust anybody. I can't live that way, right? You have to like prove me wrong. But it gets built over time, right? It doesn't change people's aversion to change. Like they're still not going to like change, but if they trust you, it makes it a lot easier, right? It just makes it a lot easier. At some point, you get the best trust of all, which is implicit trust. I have implicit trust with my wife. You know, we have implicit trust, and that allows us to have a really good relationship and makes my daughter's life, oh, so good, right? And so it's important that you can work towards this trust where trust isn't questioned anymore. I know when I got here for 6 months here, I still get questions. Somebody told one of my directors that I don't give a rat's ass about anything but making money right now. And that all my community-based programs I don't care about. And I'm just like, that's as far away from anything that I've ever been in my life. The under-resourced, the marginalized, the digital divide, these are things that affect my life daily that I really care about. And so trust is the thing that has to happen. As people trust me more, they start to understand that, right? The few that don't get it will join in or get left out. So here was my great talk today. I had 5 one-on-ones with my board of directors for an hour each today. Did a session with Papoa, and now I'm here. I'm a little wound up. The thing that happened out today was eventually they'll join you or they'll get left out. And this is a really important factor. As I move the recreation department along, you may not have agreed with me in the beginning, but Nicole, you will say that as we went forward, people either got on board or they just got left behind. I can't make you come with me, but I can sure try, but then I can't. So pretty soon the ones that are getting left behind go, I really want to be with my friends. I guess it's not so bad, right? And they come forward with you. And this is an important thing. We're going to talk about cocooning in a little bit, and you're going to really feel how this works in the worst case. Be aware of the unintentional betrayal. When you do things and change things, think deliberately. Try to think of everybody it's going to affect. I'm a red brick in one purse file. I think I'm a high DC or something. I've had these personality tests that basically tell me Jim Wheeler's #1 fault is that sometimes he doesn't consider all sides before he makes a decision. You know, the best thing I know about me is that. Because now I slow down and I think and I get intentional about those decisions because I don't want to unintentionally betray everybody. You can't work really hard to build trust and then betray somebody, right? It kills it all. You have to start over. So we try to do that a little better. All right. Of course, the genius said this, and here's the best thing. I sit in my boss's former office. I don't know if you knew Paul McCreary. He's retired now. He's in Chico. He sat in this office, and the first day I walked into his beautiful office, there was a sign on the wall and paper that said, "Collaboration moves at the trust of speed." Or at the speed of trust, the trust of speed. Collaboration moves at the speed of trust. And for him, he was a person who had to come in and make some really hard decisions. There was financial hardship at the time he started. He had to borrow money to make payroll his second week at work from the county. He had to get an advance. There was all these issues. There was organizational change that needed to be made, and nobody really trusted him. And so he couldn't collaborate with anybody because he had to earn that trust, and people had to start understanding he was a good guy. You can't collaborate if there's no trust. You can't work with employees if there's no trust. You can't work with school districts, city councils, community members, nonprofits, schools. You can't work with any of them without trust. And so that whole concept of developing trust, the things that help you do trust is super critical for the cultural chameleons in the room, right? Okay. Part of trust is understanding empathy. If there's one thing I've probably learned in the last 10 years of my life, it's just to try to have as much empathy as humanly possible for everybody I come across. To try to understand that really difficult person, there's something going on in their life that makes them that way, or something that happened to them during their life that made them that way. And if you operate from a point of empathy and you truly try to understand, it'll be easier to build trust and get along with people. No judgment, listen to their perspective, think about their emotions. And I had someone when I got hired here that was, you guys remember my first staff meeting? Had an hour and a half staff meeting. In the last 3 minutes, Debbie Hernandez is cracking up. The last 3 minutes, I stood up and said, "You guys are so negative, it pisses me off." I said, "I'm out of here." I think I dropped an F-bomb, actually. It was my first day with my staff. And I went to my office. And over the course of the next 24 hours, 6 recreation supervisors and 1 coordinator all came into my room and apologized. And we had a wonderful conversation. And one of the conversations I had, I learned so much about somebody they told me was the angriest employee in my whole department. And right now, I'd say he's one of my highest functioning 2 years later. Happy, good, smart, but it's because I tried to figure out what was wrong. Like, what's wrong? Been passed over a couple times, great. So I had a supervisor academy. He's one of 2 coordinators I put in it because I knew he wanted to promote. I tried to feed him and help him, and it turned the whole corner. I'm going to tell you what, good luck. If you can find somebody to come work for you in a big position and they know exactly what they're doing the first day right on, it's never going to happen. And so I think at that point in life, you have to decide how committed you are to the choices you made and people's development and what they do. And I got there and I was 100% committed to everyone's development. Mentoring takes time. Teaching takes time. Carrying people forward takes time and effort. And if you don't do it, we hope it's not attributed to just not wanting to deal with it, because I got so many other things to do. People are people. They need empathy. They take time. They're real human beings. And so, you make a commitment to people, you carry through with it. They need help. You try to help them until the last possible moment. And then I'm going to tell you, every once in a while, things just aren't right. It's just not the right fit, and that happens. But you'll feel better. You'll sleep better at night when you exhaust every possibility of that. I don't even know what to say about respect. So respect needs to be earned. This is what I tell 16-year-old lifeguards who are the pool manager now, 17-year-old. Respect must be earned, but lack of respect will not be tolerated. So you want to earn respect and you want to have it, but if you're the new kid and you go down to the pool and some lifeguard who's been there for 6 years and has never been promoted and doesn't care, and doesn't want and starts giving you a hard time, it has to be dealt with immediately. So respect is earned, respect is paramount, you give it to everybody. But a lack of respect cannot be tolerated at all, because what happens is it weaves its whole way through the organization. And pretty soon you end up with a maintenance yard full of people who are angry or something, right? and it's only because they don't understand, or you end up with a unit that doesn't get along. And so really, respect is earned, respect is paramount, but lack of respect can't be tolerated by anybody in any way, shape, or form. Got to be completely transparent to change culture. You cannot have a hidden motive. The minute someone finds out you have a hidden motive, it's over for you. You have to work with integrity, be transparent, do what you say you're going to do. This is another critical part of how you affect culture. And this is that whole thing. I give you the warning of where we're going to go right now, so when we start going there, you're not surprised, right? I have units that have been operating in a silo for forever, and I have an amazing supervisor whose head's down trying so hard to get some of these people to change how they look at stuff. And it's not easy, because it's years and years of, I don't have to respect you, I don't understand what the expectations are, I'm afraid of the change that's happening, why can't it be the way it was always so good. Well, guess what? The world, if you never had a time in your life to say the world's not the same as it is, it's not the same as it is right now. And so this is how things change. But your transparency through all of it, you're explaining, you're taking the time to stop and explain and care about people is more critical now than ever. Because remember, whether they're telling you or not, everyone's afraid right now. Everyone's dealing with it in different ways. The whole world is afraid right now. I have people who are so marred from what happened to Mr. Floyd, still today, months later, they're just marred. They fear for who they are, and just because of who they are, what might happen to them, and it's horrible, and there's fear everywhere. And now we have a virus that people are afraid of getting sick, or afraid of their grandma getting sick. It's pervasive. So try to be transparent, and whatever you do, have integrity. I love all the words around this integrity slide. Rectitude, you know what rectitude is? But I like it. Uprightness, honesty, good character, moral values, ethical, live right, true, ideology. It's a great word. Live every day with integrity. When I was a little kid, there was a little framed thing on the wall in my living room that I never understood. It said, live each day so you can look every damn man in the eye and tell him to go to hell. And I never understood that as a 7-year-old. But I learned it. I know what it means now. It means I'm honest. I respect you. I have integrity. And if it's really awful, I can tell you whatever, because I know who I am and what I've done, and that I'm right? And that I've lived a good right, and you can't fault me on that. It's really weird. I know Jonathan explains everything about how I was raised, huh? It's crazy. It was just this crazy little thing that got handed down through like 3 generations of Wheelers. All right. The most important thing we have to do is maintain the public trust. I am so blessed to be a public servant. I have a great career and job. It's taken care of me and my family. And for me, maintaining the public trust is the most important thing we do. I was talking about the angry customer. The angry customer is like my favorite thing in life, because it gives me a chance to make a friend, explain a point of view, win someone over. When they used to call and complain about the pool and the lifeguards, I would tell them, thank you so much. I can't be everywhere. If you didn't call me, I wouldn't know. I couldn't address the situation. You call me anytime. And pretty soon they trust you and they stop calling you, because they know you're trying to do the right thing, right? But you embrace the angry customer, man. Become their friend. Make a friend every day. Greatest thing Phil Ginsburg in San Francisco ever taught me. Make a friend every day. I need my gardeners, my pool employees, my rec center people, my playground staff. Everybody needs to make a friend every day. And as we do that, it tells our story, and they tell our story, and we get better, right? We get better results. Let's talk about failure real quick. Did you know that there's a spectrum of reasons why people fail? Be like, what? So I'm sitting on a plane, believe it or not, Chamberlain, reading the Harvard Business Review, and I find an article on a spectrum of reasons for failure by Amy C. Edmondson. And I was like, holy crap. And I'm looking at these titles here: deviance, inattention, lack of ability, process inadequacy, task challenge, process complexity, uncertainty. So really there's 2 ends of the failure spectrum. There's the blameworthy failure, which is deviance and inattention, lack of ability. and there's praiseworthy. So praiseworthy failure real quick. Hypothesis testing, exploratory testing, scientific method, right? You know the scientific method? I have a theory, I practice it, it fails, I learn something, I try again. This is how we will cure cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, all these things. We'll use this good end. But on this end is blameworthy. And so, you know, I'm a lifeguard guy, and I'm thinking, well, how does that failure work? And I look and go, oh, the most blameworthy failure is deviance. An individual chooses to violate a prescribed process or practice. This doesn't have to be aquatics. This can be a gym attendant. This can be anybody. Hey, we tell you to keep the kids off the bleachers in the gym, and these kids are playing tag on the bleachers, and one falls. You chose to violate what I asked you to do. You deviated from our process. Inattention. You just weren't paying attention to the kids on the bleachers when the kid fell. What are you thinking, right? You have to pay attention. Lack of ability. You never taught me how to go tell kids kindly to get off the bleachers in a manner that they would, right? Or lack of ability. You just didn't teach me how to do that rescue or how to scan the water, so I didn't do it, right? Process inadequacy. We have a lousy policy and someone got hurt, right? Task challenge. You asked me to do something really hard that I can't do. Process complexity. You want me to do CPR. It's really hard to do CPR when their lips are blue, and I don't know all the steps. There's 21 steps in CPR, and 70% of the people forget the ABCs the 3 months after training, right? And so understanding failure will help you change culture, because take this thing, go back and look and figure out what happened here. And so what we do is we take this and we go to a pool operator and say, these are reasons people fail. Pete DeQuincy, myself, and a couple other people came up with 60 things that happen at pools bad that are related to these failures. And then we went through and said, well, do training, make a manual, or cover it in your policy and procedures, or in your daily work practices. You could solve all of these things, right? So what I'm telling you is the culture, if you understand the failure in a culture and you work backwards from why it's a failure, it's got to be one of these reasons. You'll be able to fix the manual, the operational practice that you do when you open that gym or you pull those bleachers out, or you'll be able to put it in a policy that they learned, and you'll be able to solve failure when you solve culture. All right. I got 5 minutes. I'm going to stop in one. Cocooning. Sometimes people have a hard time admitting they did a bad hire. And sometimes when you do a bad hire, you just eliminate the bad hire before probation, and that's okay. Sometimes people don't want to admit they're not good and they made a bad hire, and they cocoon somebody. Sometimes they're called analysts. And you end up getting moved into a room somewhere where you start analyzing data, but you don't interact with people anymore because you don't understand the culture. You didn't fit in. We hired you. It doesn't work. Sometimes I bring everyone along. I truly believe that 90% of my culture will move forward in a positive manner within the next 18 months. I believe it, maybe 2 years, because I got a big chunk of them already moving forward. But there's some people that ultimately will have to be cocooned, pulled out, moved away because they're just destructive to the system. So sometimes you have to cocoon people. Have you ever seen this quote? This is Marianne Williamson. And if you ever wanted to understand me, read this quote. This is, when I read this quote, it struck me at home. Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us the most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be gorgeous, talented, fabulous? But actually, who are you not to be, right? You're a child of God, and your playing small does not serve the world. Here we go. You really want to know me? There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. Doesn't help anybody, right? We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us, not just in some of us, but all of us. And as I let my light shine, I give you permission to let your light shine. This isn't about, it's about understanding people and doing your maximum potential, your sacred human responsibility, right? When I turn my light on and let it shine and be everything I am, whether people understand me and like it or people are judgmental and it scares the crap out of them, I don't really care, because I know my integrity, my transparency, my vision, my ethics, everything I'm doing is for the right reason. Therefore, I should do what I can. So, as there shine, we allow you to liberate yourself from fear. And so your goal should be to just be that ethical, high value, inclusive leader that cares about people, works with empathy to change cultures, be careful of unintentional betrayal, explain everything early and often. And in the end, you will let everybody liberate themselves and you'll all move forward together. And it's very, very important you understand that your playing small doesn't serve anybody. Play big, believe in what you're doing, play big, and have fun. That's a mouthful. Hey, Brandon Taylor. Holy cow, I got 2 doctors in my session. That's pretty cool. What's up, Brandon? How's the Bulldog?
Doing well, doing well.
If you guys haven't heard him talk about Jedi, man, it's been out there a bit, but you need to go listen to him talk about Jedi. He's my new Jedi master. He's going to work for my district to help me get my community into a better place because it's so critical. Any questions while we got a minute? What's up, Pedro? I see you down there looking good.
While you're thinking of your questions, I've gone ahead and put the surveys and the CEU information in the chat box.
We don't need questions.
And then if you have any questions, let us know.
Does this thing, do I have to send this to somebody so that people can pick it up somewhere if they want it?
Yeah, you can send it to me, Jim.
I'm happy to, if you want to look at this, there's not a lot of meat in the slides. It's a lot of talking, but hopefully one thing in this presentation struck a chord with you that will help you affect change in the lives of others and yourself and your agency. So thank you so much. And especially to everybody who is on the CARE conference. I love telling people about the CARE conference and what CARE stands for. Matt Galindo and you guys, you're geniuses. It's awesome. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh yeah, Malcolm Gladwell, Spike, right there, huh? He laughed.